I'm Miriam Joy and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be working on the Southwest Sunburst class, and this was one of my first class that I did and is still one of the favorites. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to start with some basics and work our way through the class until you have a finished product. I do them a little bit differently, my classes. I pause in between to allow you time to do that section of the gourd so you don't get ahead of yourself and forget where you're at. So each individual step I'll tell you when to pause, and also that allows me time to set up for the next segment as well, and that works really well for us. We're going to have a great time, so let's get started. Okay, let's talk about the type of gourd we want and the size it needs to be. For this project, I used a canteen gourd. You can use a round gourd if you would like. I prefer the canteen because it shows the edge off a lot better because it comes and slopes more in instead of being round. So I really do like the canteen for this project. And then what I did is with my flexi, I measured it, and if you look at it, it's about 9 inches across. So you want to make sure that it's wide enough because we've got to get all of this design on. And then I kind of measured it from how it is from the bottom to the top, and I think I had about between 4.5 to 5 inches because you're using this part for your design. So if you were doing a round one, allow that a little bit taller. You need that part for your design. Now, once you figured out which one you could use for your gourd, this is where the gourd toppers come in, and I really love the gourd toppers for this project. I use the 4th gourd topper, which has the inside it's going to be one of those days where I can't. They call it an OD, inside diameter. Those words that get funny on us, because you can set this on the gourd and then you can trace your circle on with your charcoal pencil. It is very important that it is 4 inches, the inside diameter, to make this work with the pattern that we're going to use today. So that's really important. I can't stress that enough. So go ahead and saw that part out, clean out your gourd. Once you're done, take your, I used the cheap 98-cent spray paint from Walmart, and the funnest part of spray paint is always opening the lid, or varnish as well. And I simply just spray it inside and get it all in there. Don't try and do it out here because you need to get your spray on your gourd, and it's just the inside, and it's not, doesn't have to worry about being perfect and everything. And then I take black acrylic paint and I paint the inside rim right here. Don't try to spray paint this. This is where a lot of people go wrong with the inside, trying to do the inside. They try to spray paint it. Then when you're done with that, you can either use a red leather dye or an ink dye of any type, or alcohol ink. As long as it's red, any of those will work, so don't worry about it. You can see I have a lot of spots on this one, and that's okay because we're going to come back after you've done that part and we're going to talk about sponging it and everything. So go ahead and get that prepped, and then come on back and let's get started with putting some texture on our gourd. Okay, we're going to put some texture onto our gourd before we start putting wax on it. We're going to do that with acrylic paint. I am using pumpkin, and I'm also using a dark red, and it really doesn't matter what dark red. This one is kind of a wine or a maroon, or any of them with a barn red, or just a darker red is fine. What I also realize is a lot of people don't know how to sponge correctly. So I wanted to kind of show you that, and a lot of people don't realize that there is a little bit to that. So the first thing that we're going to do that's real important is we're going to dip our sea sponge. And I do use a sea sponge because it's more natural in the water, but squeeze out all the water. You don't want any water left in that, because some people go-to sponge and it's just watery and they're just putting water everywhere and they're diluting their paint and it doesn't go on as easy and it's actually messier. So we're going to start with our darker color here, and it doesn't matter what type or brand name of acrylic paint. I just pick up whatever I can get, usually cheapest from Walmart. And these have been around a while, sitting in my cold studio, so they're a little bit, this guy's even dried out. Okay, this is where it makes it fun. I can get up and walk and get what I need. So let's pick something out here that's a little bit darker. And I'm going to go with another wine kind of color. This one's wiggling a bit, so hopefully we can get paint out of it. Okay, there's our paint. Now, what most people do is they take their sponge and they go just like this into the paint. And that's not what you want to do. By doing that, you're actually going to get blotches of paint everywhere. What you should do is take your sponge and pull your paint out. So as you're getting on a tail like that, and then put your sponge in it, and then you start to get a nice even design. So you're not getting just a blotch of paint here and there. And always pounce it, don't slide it on your gourd. And we're just going to come in, and by turning your gourd too, you're not left with the same exact pattern. I'm going to reload here. Pounce it up and down in that paint. When you're looking at your sponges as well, you usually have a natural side and a cut side. Now, there's nothing wrong with the cut side, but the natural side gives you more of a pattern. There's a hole out in here and everything, so you really want to look for more of the natural side of that sponge. Now I'm just coming in here and I'm going all over the gourd from top to bottom, just working it here and there so that we get this all on here. I think I'm going to have to load one more time. Up and down in it. And it's probably better to start out a little bit lighter because you always can go back and go darker. So I think I'd rather have a little bit light than too much. But there really is no right or wrong to it. You just don't want to have a section that you started out that's darker than another section lighter. You want it kind of even if possible. So I've kind of put a nice section on that. Make sure you get some around the rim, and you can see the red's absorbing into the gourd. Now I'm rinsing my sponge out here, and I'm going to go into my pumpkin. I'm trying to get this really wrung out so there's no water in there. And let's put some pumpkin in here. And we're going to do the same thing again with this. Pull this down. And then, see on this one you can really see it. So how it's more even than just one blob where you would just stick it into the paint. So we've got that a lot more even. Okay, we're going to come and we're going to sponge. Now some of these gourds will really absorb the paint, and you will not hardly see this until you're done with your pattern and you varnish it. So that is okay. Don't worry about it if it's not quite there and you don't see it. Each gourd is different. As we all know, if you've worked with them a bit, everybody does something different. The color's always different on each gourd. So that's kind of fun too, because you never quite know what you're going to get until you're done. I'm just kind of walking that around. almost done here. See how that's really adding a lot of texture to that? I love this texture with my artwork, the crayon. It really brings a lot of life to it and a lot of texture, and I use it with a lot of my gourd, a lot of my patterns. So this is a really nice technique to know, and this is how I do a lot of my backgrounds. I'm asked that a lot, how I do my backgrounds, and this is probably one of my most favorite backgrounds, is just texturizing it or sponging it with the sponge. So go ahead and let this dry, and then we're going to put our pattern on. I'm doing something a little bit different. If you wanted to at this point in time after it's dry, you also could put a light coat of Krylon varnish on it. Just a light coat. That helps keep everything cleaner and also helps the white lines to remove a little bit easier. So let your paint dry all the way first, and then if you want to, just a real light coat to help keep that all clean, and then come on back and we're going to give you your supply list to get you started on the rest of it. Okay, let's get started on our supplies. The first thing we're going to talk about is our melting pot. I will tell you how you can work with just one in case you only have one, but I like to work with three because I have 3 different colors in this gourd. So it really saves a lot of time, and it saves crayon if you don't have to stop and switch your color out. However, we will do it so that we'll only have to go back and add turquoise at the very end for some dots. So we can do that. And I always have them set in my tray. If you have just a smaller tray and you're only working with one pot, I always tell you if you're right-handed, put it on the right-hand corner. That way if you drip, then you drip on your tray and you don't happen to drip on yourself. And speaking of that, always have an old shirt or an apron. You don't want to get it on your nice clothes. The color in crayons does stain very well once it is warm, so we want to make sure that you do have that covered. So we've got our tray, and then the tools that we're going to use today are the number 2 tool, the small end, and I always say mine are very well loved because I use them all the time. So we're going to use the small end of the number 2 tool, and then I'm going to be using the number 1 tool and also the small end of it. And if you happen to have yours at home, yours either has a pink or a red stripe on it. I just use mine so much they just constantly are used. Your charcoal pencil to apply your pattern onto, and then also our shovel-nosed hobby knife, which is important if we need to remove anything that we use that knife. I also have my paper towel to clean my tools off on, and as you notice, I set them right into the chimney to warm them up, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we start to get into our practice. And you want to make sure that you have your cotton balls, especially if you're only working with one color, and also your Q-tip to remove your charcoal lines, your water to dampen your Q-tip with as well. I also have a gum eraser, so if you have any problems removing some of the color, if you've made a mistake, or your white lines, you can also use a gum eraser. The 4 colors that we're going to be working with today, our white and our blue-green, are going to make our turquoise. They are going to be 50-50, and I'll show you how to mix that up when we get going. We are also going to be using brown, and of course my favorite, yellow dandelion. I use this color a lot. It is a really great yellow to work with. It's not as thin as the other yellow, and it just has a little bit of orange or something to it. It makes your artwork pop. I never claimed to be a yellow person, but I use this color probably 4 to 1 over anything else. It just really helps your artwork stand out. Also have a piece or an old gourd that you can practice on when we start to practice with our process. We're going to use, instead of our gourd toppers, we're going to use our mini gourd toppers today. We're going to be using the 3rd and the 5th ring as we get started. I'm also got a gourd board, which allows your gourd to dry either while you've dyed it or painted or after you varnish it. And I've got my different varnishes, and we'll talk to those when we get to that section. I've got my E6000 to glue my embellishments on, and I have some different embellishments here. This gourd has a little bit more embellishments than some of the others. It's got 6 on top and 6 in the middle, and I use 3 of one kind and 3 of the other kind on the middle sections. So when you're out and about and you have a design that you know you're going to do, start looking for those embellishments. Watch the sales like at Michael's or Joann's or any of your craft stores when they go 50% off, and think about flat ones. Flat ones work better. You can glue them on just a little bit easier. But also know that you can use other things besides stones. Look for your scrapbook embellishments or your even beads, silver beads or different things like that. And I also have toothpicks to put the E6000 on with. And I think we covered all of our basic supplies. So I want you to go collect your supplies and come on back, and we'll start to put our pattern on. Okay, we're going to take our mini toppers, and the first thing we're going to do is count from the middle, and we're going to go to the 5th one. Now be really careful with this and make sure that you really do have the 5th one because they're so close in size. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know it looks big, but it really is the one that we're going to be working with to get our rim onto our gourd. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you, on this one, I have a spot that would be not as desirable to have my design right in the middle, and it may be a little bit rougher. So I'm going to put that right in the middle so my design will go to the side of that. So if you have a spot that you might not want exactly in the middle of a design, put that right under the fullest part. Now when we're working with this, you can see I've already got this marked. If it was about halfway, it would line up about right there, but we want this to be a little bit more than half. We want more of a shell design. So I just took my white charcoal pencil and I marked it so that each one of them will be the same in size, and that's what's really neat about the gourd toppers or the mini toppers is you can write on them and they will keep that for you. Now I'm going to put this design on. And a lot of times, it's a little bit harder on this design, but a lot of times I will tell people, take the next size topper and use it to help hold your other one in place, and it gives it more stability. But on this one, it's a little bit tougher to do. Now I put my first one on, and what I'm going to do is mark that, and I'm going to take it directly across my gourd. Now, I know that this can be a different size in this because every gourd is kind of different. And please know that I am not an exact person. I like to just get it done. So if you want to measure it out and do it a little bit more exact, please go ahead and do that. I do not have a problem with that, and I know that I am not. I like to just kind of eyeball it and get it done. So that's kind of just how I do it. So I put the one on directly across. So we know now that we're going to put 2 in between each one of these. So what I'm going to kind of do is look at that space and draw just a little line that it looks the same to me. And then I'm going to come in here and see if that looks about the same there. Now these are a little bit closer together than I would like them. I would have liked a little bit more space between them. And I don't think I'm going to get that, so I'm going to keep these nice and tight. And I'm actually kind of even bringing in my circle just a tad to make it fit. So know that you can do that too. And this is just an idea. Your shape is going to be different anyway. It's not going to end up being exactly the same that you draw, because it's the lines and the strokes. It's not the actual outside of the circle, so don't worry about that. It wiggled on me here. Let's go back and put that down, and we're just going to draw that back on again. And our last one here. And now you know why I say it's so important to make sure that you have that gourd cut on that inside diameter, which is ID, inside diameter, is more important. Now, if you have one that's cut a little bit wider, these spaces just allow these spaces to be bigger, which is actually a little bit nicer, because you can actually put a little bit more of your strokes when we get to doing this inside design right here. So they do not have to touch here. Just try to make these spaces as even as you possibly can, but doing that way it makes that a little bit easier. So I actually want you to stop and do this part of putting the design on, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put on the design around the middle. Okay, now that you've got your 6 little shell designs put onto your gourd, we're going to come and we're going to put on the inside circles. Now I want you to think about these a little bit. And so you can see this side of my gourd, this gourd is bigger here. And I could get a little plastic button or something and put it right there to even it out a little bit, which would help. But what we're looking at is we want to make sure that we go to the fattest part of the gourd, and when we put our design on, we make sure that we have enough room to pull our design up here. You don't want to be so close that when we go to put these outside sunburst strokes on, that they come into this design as well. So what we're going to do is make sure that that is far enough down, kind of in the middle of that gourd, and you're going to come down right where each one of these is connected, and you're going to put, using the same size circle, the number 5 ring, we're going to put 6 of those there. And I've got to bring that down here because this guy's a little bit slippery, so I can't quite get it right where I would like you to be able to see it. And we're going to put one in, and if you want to measure this out more evenly, please do. Again, I told you I'm not an exact person, but I want to keep these, and sometimes by lining this line up with that, that also helps. But keeping these in the same, and if you have your flexi and want to measure it down, just remember that your gourd changes size as you go. If you don't have a nice even one, like mine kind of changes size as I go. And we don't want to rub it off too much on the other side, but we probably will just a little bit. But that is part of the part of it. So this one looks a little bit further. I'm trying to even it out here. And it's good to see these kind of things, because then you know what happens when you run into it. I'm going to go ahead and put it all the way on, and then I'm going to go back and look at it, because I think I have one that's a little bit closer than the others, and see if I need to remove him and put him back on again. I think I have one left here. Okay, those are pretty well. This one I was worried about being just a tad bit over. So take your wet Q-tip, don't do what I'm doing, and remove it and put it a little bit more even if you need to. So I'm just going to move that guy over just a tad. So that kind of tells you what you can do as well. All right, now we're going to go to the third circle, counted from the inside, 1, 2, 3. So it is 2 down from the 5th one. And what I'm going to do on that is I'm going to do a circle in every other one. Make sure that's it is. Didn't look like it. And we're just going to put it right in the middle of those. Just like that. So every other one, we're going to put that inside circle on. So, and the last one here. Okay, now I have one other thing I want you to do for me before we get ready to practice here. I want you to put a dot in every single circle, and on the top I want you to put a dot right in the middle on the edge. This gives us a visual reference point so that when we're pulling our strokes, we know where to pull it to. So get all those dots on for me. And we are going to come back. We're going to practice and go over the crayon basic technique. This is a real good refresher even for those of you that have done the process, because from time to time we forget some of the basics, and I'm still always learning a lot about the wax technique. So I like to give you as much information as I can about that. So let's finish putting your design on and let's start to practice. The first thing we're going to do is teach you the basics of wax design. And if you've taken a class from me or you've watched my video and you've already learned all this, you can fast forward through this part, that's fine. You'd be amazed though how many people sit through this part again, even in a class, and say how much they picked up or little tips that they didn't catch before. So let's get started. The first thing that I want to have you note is I only use Crayola crayon. I don't use any other crayons. If you've ever worked with or colored with a different type of crayon, you notice that it's not as bright and it's a lot waxier. So this is a thicker product and you get a brighter color. So it is important that it is just Crayola crayon. I try and do most of my classes in the 24 pack so that you always have that available to you. So the next thing we're going to do, well, the next thing, we're going to talk about is our low temp melting pot. This is a low temp melting pot. If you've ever had a hot glue gun, this is the low setting on a high to a low setting. So we need the one that has a well. The well is where we're going to actually put our crayon. We also have a chimney in it so that we can keep our tools warm when they're not in use. And we also have the wood piece on it so that the tools sit in it without falling out. The one thing that I do not like about this is the cord comes to the front, so you will always have that towards you. I always tell you, if you're left-handed, put it in the top left of your corner of your tray. If you're right-handed, put it in the top right-hand corner of your tray. I always work on a tray. I tell the story about when I first started playing with this. I had 6 of these, all full with wax, hooked up to a power cord, went around the corner and happened to catch the power cord, and I had wax fly everywhere. So ever since then I've been working on a tray, so it helps to catch you. We also have 3 pot trays that are individually divided that are very nice. I didn't want to put it on this video because they take up too much room for everything I want to show you today, but you can see those on my website, so those are really nice as well. So it's real important that you have the low temp melting pot. I have tried different melting pots. While they're good for other things like the round one, they're flat, and because of the little part of the well, you use most of the time on my products I use less than 1 crayon to do a project. So by just using that little tiny part, that's why we need that. So it's real important. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our hobby knife, and that is another thing. If you happen to notice, I have a hobby knife with a shovel nose, and I like the shovel nose. I don't prefer to work with the flat ones because gourds aren't flat if you've ever tried to work on one. So this one seems to do really well when we get ready to remove our wax and work with that. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to cut the paper. Now when you do it the first time, you're going to cut just above that Crayola symbol on the crayon, and I just cut it straight down, and then hopefully it isn't a sticky one, and we're going to peel that wrapper, and then I pop it. I never try and cut it, and then I pop it into 2 pieces, and we're going to put that in that well, and you're going to notice that's starting to melt immediately. The reason that we broke it into the 2 pieces, you can see that pieces on top is kind of going around the well, and we want as much as we can get directly into that well. Never ever put it into the chimney. It just makes a big gigantic mess, so we want to make sure that we don't do that. So we're going to take that and put that there. And another thing I wanted to tell you is never cut your crayon like this if you can help it, because your thumb is right behind it, and trust me, it doesn't end well. I've done that in several classes and I've had to run and get a band-aid. So when you're cutting your next pieces of your crayon off, take it and push down on the crayon and cut the little piece off that way. We want to keep the well full. Right now it's perfect. When we get about 3/4 or under, your strokes start to get smaller. So that's why we cut the little pieces and keep adding them into the well. So that's why it's really important to keep that full. We want to keep that full as we're working. The next thing that we're going to talk about are our wax design tools. And I'm showing you 3 of the 4 that I have in my set right now. And I have a number 0, which is a 2 to a 3 millimeter, a number 1, and a number 2 tool that I'm working with today. And these are much loved, as you can tell. And each of them has a different size ball on it, so they actually make 2 size strokes. In the tree class, I'm going to kind of let you see how far each one pulls and kind of let you pick which one you would like to use as you're working. So we're going to stick this one. I'm going to use the number 2. The number 2 is the easiest to learn on, and I'm going to put another one into the warmer and go to that in just a minute. I'm going to tell you the most important thing that you need to remember when you're working with the wax design. It's really important, and a lot of people forget it, so please make sure you're paying attention. You have to warm your tools. If you take a cold tool and dip it into your wax, it's going to look like that, and you can see it sticking, and you're going to say, what did I do wrong? So make sure that you warm the tool. It only takes about 15 seconds to set it directly in there, or keep it in your warmer as well. You don't have to have it into your warmer first. You can simply set it into your wax. Some people think they have to warm it up in the warmer. You don't. You can simply set it into your wax for about 15 seconds. It does take just a little bit longer in the winter, so just make sure that that's nice and warm. Now when we were looking at the wax, the low temp melting pot, it has a slide on it down to the bottom of the base, and it's deeper down here at this very bottom. So it's real important that we go down to the deepest part of that, and if you have one, you can look at that so you can see where the deepest part of the well is. We always want to go to the deepest part of the well, and I always tell people to touch the bottom. Don't come out the sides because that actually takes wax off. So it's real important not to come up the sides or anything like that. When I have a class or you're practicing, I always tell them to use the crayon colors that you don't use a lot for other projects. So practice with your colors that you don't like as well or they're starting to build up. So that's why I have like an orange and a purple, because I don't use those as much in my classes. The next thing I really want people to pay attention to is when they lift it, people get nervous and they'll go back and forth and not realizing that they're not touching the bottom again, and that takes wax off of their tool as well. So you want to make sure you're going all the way to the bottom and touch it. The next thing that we do, we don't even realize we do. So while you're first starting this, I want you to sit there and watch yourself. You take it and you knock that drip off. It's a natural instinct in us that we want to knock that drip off. So really watch yourself. Another thing that a lot of people do is they'll not know where they want to go on their gourd, and they'll sit there and hold it as well so it's cooling off, or be talking to their friends. I always say you either need to be in the well, putting on your stroke, and then returning to your well. Never have your tool out where it is cooling off. But once you start working and you have that down, you don't need to warm it each time. It stays warm. So we're going to go all the way to the bottom, and what I do is I touch it and I pull it straight out. Now see how I've really got my hand to the side of that, and I'm putting that there and I'm pulling it. So set your hand, rest your hand on the gourd so that you have control of that stroke. And I'm going to change colors here. For one reason, I want the darker color to show up a little bit more, but I also want to show you how to change your color out as well. To clean your tool, you simply just take it while it's warm. It's much easier, and just wipe it like that in your paper towel. But we're going to take a cotton ball and we're going to divide this cotton ball into half. And slowly, don't put your finger in there, it's hot, and I like using my number 0 tool because it's the smallest and I can get into the corners with it. We're going to slowly push this in. If you go too fast, it comes up over the sides and it starts to make a bigger mess, and you're going to be amazed how easy this is to clean. And remember, we've only used one cotton ball. This is the other half that we're finishing cleaning this with. The more you keep this in a ball, the easier it is to push around. So we've cleaned that out, and we're going to put in the purple color, remember, just above the Crayola sign, and slip that paper down and pop it 2 pieces right into the well. Alright, and you're going to see how fast that starts to melt. And then we're still working with our number 2 tool. We're going to give that, if you've just started your color for the first time, please make sure that it melts all the way first before you use it. But if you're reloading a color like it is now, you don't have to wait for the whole thing. You can just keep on working. But we're going to go back to where we left off about setting your hand down on your gourd. And it's easier with a gourd than it is just a piece like this. A lot of times I will be setting it down and I will hold it with my hand. You also can practice on paper, but never throw any part of your gourd away. There's always something you can be doing it, whether it's practice pieces or even old gourds that won't work for anything else that have a bad side to them or caved in, you might be able to practice on one side of them. So there's a lot of things that you can do. So we're going to set that down and we're going to lay it to the side and we're going to pull it. And we're always pulling it towards us. If you're a painter, you always pull it towards you, never away from you. It's much harder to do it that way. And I warmed my tool for about 15 seconds, and we're going to go, we're going to lay our hand down, and we're going to pull that stroke. Now, if you see, I don't pick my hand up, I let the color run out. Now, I wanted to, this stroke is perfect. See on the sides where it's not quite as smooth as this first one? I actually didn't let the tool warm enough up in the very beginning. The second one, it had cooled off just a tad. So if you get these edges that aren't quite real smooth, you need to warm your tool up just a little bit more. So we're going to do another one. Make sure you're not that you're not knocking it, hitting it, or taking any of your paint off, and pull it till it runs out. Now see how much smoother that is, and you're going to notice the more you practice, the more they're going to be the same size, and the ball controls the length and the width of your strokes. So that is how we determine the size, and I held that out for just a second, so let's put it back in and warm it up for just a second, so we don't have one that we don't like. Now another thing, as I get a lot of people in here and they want to do a stroke and they want to go like that, well, it's going to look just like that. You don't want to do it. Another thing is if your tails start to skip, you're pulling that too fast. So if you can see, I'm doing a nice even pulled stroke. I'm not hurrying it. I'm not doing it too slow or too fast, just nice and even and pulled. So we're going to try our other size tip. Now this guy's been in here warming. If you don't clean it and you've put this in here by mistake and it's still got wax in it, simply take your Q-tip and get that wax out. That's all you have to do. So we're going to put that one in there to warm, and this guy's still nice and warm. So we're going to do him, and this is a little bit smaller stroke. See the difference between this size and this size? He's a little bit smaller. So we're getting nice strokes out of that. So I kind of want you to know what size tool makes what size stroke. I'm actually going to set the smallest one in there. We're going to play with him just a little bit. But we're going to talk about if you happen to make a mistake, let it dry, and then come with your hobby knife, and I'm always working at an angle. I'm never going straight up and down. That's when you start to scratch your gourd, is always come underneath it, and see how we got underneath that, and it's removing so much nicer. So I get about that first half off, and then I come in and now I'm working the other direction towards me, and we simply take that off. And if you have a little line like this, you can also take your gum eraser. And the fun thing about working in my studio is if I didn't have it, I can grab it. So that's where it makes fun, is you can get to see all my bloopers. And we're going to come in here and we're going to finish removing any of that we needed to. Okay? So you get redos in this. So I want you to practice removing some of your strokes as well as putting them on. So we get redos and do-overs in this. And that's what's so great about this wax design, is we know we're never perfect. So, okay. Now I have warmed this little guy up, so we're going to try to do him all the way to the bottom at the top, all the way down. See, he is smaller. Okay? So he's making wonderful little lines. And don't think about just straight lines. Fleur-de-lis. There's all kinds of fun things. I actually hit a bump in my gourd here, but you can go with it. You cannot go over this part of your gourd, because it's wax and it's already drying, it's not going to look good, but you can bump up next to it. You can bring it in beside it and go across, especially its tail. And because there's not as much wax down here, you can get away with going on that part. So you never want to try. I have a lot of people that when they're doing my classes want to put the stroke on and they want to come back in and mess with it. Now see how that's starting to look really bad? This is already drying. It's amazing how fast a stroke dries on you. Let me show you an example. See how it's nice and shiny right there? I'll put a new one next to it so you can see how fast. As soon as it turns dull, that is dry. So you would never want to try and come in here and fix this, because all you're doing is messing it up. If you have a stroke that you don't like, remove it. Never try and fix it. The next thing we're going to talk about is dots. You always want to go, the size of your dot is the size of the tool that you're working with. So you always want to keep it the same. Now see those little flecks that happen to appear right there? If you get one or two with a dot, that's normal. That's just the nature of the beast. You can come in if you don't like them and remove them with your little hobby knife or X-Acto knife. It's really simple to do. The other real fun thing with dots is you can come in here and you can do a descending dot where you're actually running out of wax. So that's a really neat effect as well. So practice your dots, practice your strokes, and work with this for a while till you're comfortable with it. Once you're comfortable with that part of it, we're going to get started on our class. Alright, now that you practiced, make sure you're comfortable with the process, and let's get started on our gourd. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to mix our colors, and we're going to be using the blue, green, and the white to make our wonderful turquoise, and it's 50-50, and I do this all the time. So just above the second black line, we're going to come and cut each of those and put them into our well. And remember to cut your paper down the side. A lot of people forget it. They try to kind of shovel it off, and it's so much harder that way. So we're just going to slice that, and then we're going to cut them, because this is a more exact measurement than just popping it as we normally do. So we're going to put those both directly into the well, and they're going to start to melt right away. I do want to tell you, we talked about how to keep the well full, but don't put the well full enough that you can't see the little triangle of your well anymore, and it starts to go to that second layer. Once that starts to happen, you start to drip a lot more, and I know a lot of people will say, why am I dripping? And if you do get it to that level, just simply take your cotton ball and just absorb just enough that you see that little rectangle in your well again. So that is really easy to do. Now, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to stir it a lot at first until it starts to melt some. So once it starts to melt and it's almost done, then you go ahead and start to stir your color. Don't get in the habit of doing a lot of stirring or clicking or hitting unless it is called for. And we're just going to mix that color all up. You want to make sure that it's all melted so you don't get any marbleizing color or anything. And we're going to start our shells off with our number 2 tool, the small end. We've got a large area to color. And we will end every stroke at our little white dot that we put in. So that's real important to remember that. A lot of people will pull it this way and not realize that this one goes here. Every stroke is going to end here. So we want to make sure that we are very clear on that. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And that first one I'm going to bring straight down the middle, straight towards me. And if you don't make it all the way to the white, that's okay. If you do make it just run off the edge, that's fine. Now remember what we talked about, this second stroke, making sure you bring it along the edge, and you're just kind of following the rim, and we're ending at that white dot. Now we're going to come back and we're going to divide it again. So we're simply just following that and dividing it. And we're going to do the same thing with the other side and just divide it. Now, depending on how big your strokes, you will kind of learn how many to put in between. At this point in time, I don't want to put just one in between because I think that leaves a space too far open. So I'm actually going to put 2 strokes in between each section. So I'm going to put 2 strokes here, 2 strokes here, 2 strokes here, and 2 strokes there. So I'm going to start here. And if you were a little bit shy and you can only get 1 on one side and 3 on the other, that's okay. Nobody should be counting your strokes. And see how I'm always turning my gourd so that I'm pulling my stroke straight towards me, and I've got it really turned out to the left like a pencil. And I'm always resting my hand on the gourd so I can stabilize that stroke. Alright, we've got our first shell done. Let's go ahead and do another one. So we're going to do the same thing again, right down the middle. And one towards us. And if you need to turn that around so that you're pulling that towards you, please go ahead and do that. It's a little bit harder because there's nothing to hold on to. And I know that's one of the harder times to do that stroke. We're going to divide it again. And we're going to divide the other side again. And we're going to put 2 strokes in between each one. So we're coming down. And you can see mine aren't always perfect. Some are a little bit closer than others. If you don't like what you have on, remove it. Take it off. Okay. Just keep on coming. And don't forget, a lot of people, like I said, if it doesn't reach here, it's okay. Make sure you're using the number 2 tool, the small end. But don't forget, we're going to put stones over the top of this, and we always put it over to clean up our insides, our middles. That adds so much, and it cleans it up so much, because people always get, oh my gosh, it looks awful. Well, don't worry about that part. We're going to clean that up. Let's do one more here, and then I'm going to have you do the other 3 on your own. Now see, mine didn't reach on that one. It didn't go all the way up to the dot, so don't worry about it, because there again, our stone goes there. And unless you get to the dot, don't lift your tool up. Let it run out of wax. A lot of people want to pick it up, and we don't want to pick it up. We want to just let it run out of wax. So we're going to put 2 in between this one. And see how this is really starting to take shape. And see the consistency I'm pulling my strokes with. I'm not hurrying them along. I'm doing them nice and slow. If your tails are skipping, you're going too fast. And don't be talking or looking and not realizing that your tool is out getting cold. So, alright, we have finished 3 of those, and see how that's already really starting to come to life. So I want you to go ahead to complete the next 3 and do that part and come back, and we'll start on the inside circles. Okay, now that you've completed the top part of it with the turquoise color, we're going to get started, and we're going to be working on the little inside circles of just our double circles. So we're only doing 3 of those. Now I want you to check your crayon or your well and make sure that you have enough that wax in it. You probably should have had to fill it up once before now. Remember, we want to keep that well full because you don't want your strokes to start to get smaller. So if you notice your strokes are smaller, then you need to stop and fill your well up. So we want to do that. Now we're also going to switch our tool size, and we're going to go to our number 1 tool, the small size. And now that I've got that color in here, I am going to mix it up. And we're going to get started on the inside of our sunburst. Just remember to keep filling your wells up. That's what allows us to use less crayon in this process, but also we've got to be a little bit more aware of it and keep that working. Okay, we've almost got that there. Alright, what we're going to do first of all, and this is kind of a hard gourd to work on and show you, so I'm going to see if you can see it from there, and if not, our cameraman will let me know. You want to try and keep your gourd when you're working on it as flush as you can, because if you were pulling it this way, your stroke's going to want to take off on you. So you want to try and hold it as even as you can, but I'm trying to also hold it where you can see it. You want to make sure that you should be pulling it directly towards you. Now I'm going to start at 12 o'clock and put that first one on. And then I'm going to go to 6 o'clock, and if you get to the middle, stop. Don't go any further than that. But if you run out, that's okay. And then we're going to do 3 o'clock, and then we're going to do 9. So that you can see that. Make sure if you have one that you don't like on there, don't try to go over the top of it. Remember how we talked about it is already cooling off, so it's already cold and you're just going to make a mess. So remove it and then put it back on. So we have 4. Now we're going to go directly in between each of one of those again to make 8. And I'm kind of going backwards just for you guys to be able to see at home. So we have 8 strokes in there. And we're going to come back and we're going to cut one more in between each of those. We should end up with 16 strokes. Now you've already got these divided, so just divide them right down the middle, and you can go just around that way and put them on. And don't lose your spot. Some people lose their spot and don't quite know where they're at. If you've got 15 or 17 on instead of 18, or however you're supposed to end up with, don't worry about it. Nobody's going to look and count them. Just make sure that they look even to you, and do try and keep that number consistent. Okay, so we've got that one on, so let's go and let's do one more here. Now watch when you have this part, especially when you're working with a gourd like this, you don't want to take it and smush it down on your wax onto your table. You want to make sure that you either have something soft under there, or that you're allowing that to be up off the table, that you're not pushing down on it. Okay, I put my first 2 on. I divided it into 4 now. Now I'm going to divide it into 8. And once we get it into 8, we're going to divide it to 16. That's the magic number. Just trying to think of it at the last segment there. We're coming right in between each one of those. If you've ever taken a class or listened to me before in teaching, I always say it's as easy as cutting pie. Just keep dividing your patterns. That's how I've always done them from the start, to keep them as even as possible. Just simply start with 1 stroke, make it 2, make it 4, make it 6, make it 8, and then 16. So that's how we do that. Now I want you to go ahead and do the 3rd and final. Remember, we're only doing the 3 insides of the little circles, and then when you're done with that, we're going to remove our inside circle lines and our white charcoal pencil on the top. And when you're working with the Q-tip, wring all of your water out. There should be no water in here. It should just be damp, especially if you're working with leather dye or ink dye and you didn't put anything on it to help seal it. You don't want to lift that back up. So we're going to come in this, we're not removing this line here, we're moving this line here, and work with your strokes, not against your strokes. So don't go this way. You want to go up and down and remove all of those lines from that inside circle. It's easier to do it now than it is to do it later, so we want to make sure that we do that. And then we're also going to come up here and we're going to remove all of these lines as well, because we're going to come in here, we're going to put some yellow dots in between. So I want you to go ahead and complete that for me. Remove your lines, and then we will go to the next step after that. Okay, now that you've got your 3 centers on and you removed your lines from the inside circles and the top, we're going to go ahead and continue. If your white lines didn't remove, remember you can also use your gum eraser on those to help you as well. That's what it's for. If you're only working with one melting pot at this time, change it out with the cotton ball like we showed you a little bit earlier, and let's move to our dandelion color. Now remember, when we do a full crayon, it's just above that Crayola symbol, and we're going to take that paper and slice it. Don't try to scooch it up there. And we're going to pop it this time, and 2 pieces, that way it doesn't make such a mess in your well. And we're going to put that in, and it's going to start to melt. And while we're working with our number 1 tool, I'm going to go ahead and finish using it so that we don't have to go back to it again. So we're going to put the dots on, and those dots are going to be in between each little stroke, and that is going to be with our number 1 tool, the small end. If you have a bigger area and you want a bigger dot, then go ahead and do a bigger dot, but I need a little bit smaller dot there, and we're just going to come in between each one of those and put those dots in. Don't forget, we talked about how loading it the same way makes it the same size dot every time, so that we want to keep those the same size. Make sure you're loading at the same place, just like you do your strokes in your melting pot. And I dripped over here, which is a good sign. The yellow will drip a little bit more than the other color that we used. Now, if this had landed on a stroke, you could either remove it, which makes even more reason to have the 3 colors that you're working on, but sometimes you can also cut it, remove that part, and then just lightly come across the top of it till you remove all of the yellow. But remember, when you're working with your knife, to keep it in an angle. Don't keep it straight up and down, because that's where you start to scratch your gourd, and we don't want to scratch our gourd. Okay, so another thing is always to try and keep the area between you and your melting pot. Try not to put your whole design in front of it, so you're not coming over this part. Keep this as close to there, so if you drip, that you hopefully won't be dripping onto your nice design and having to worry about that. But drips do happen with this technique. I have noticed that certain colors do drip more than other colors, and especially the gel crayons. And when working with them, go down to a smaller size tool. And I don't like the size of this one. I think this guy's too little. I'm going to take him off. I'm going to put him back on. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and finish all the top around here. And what I also want you to do is think about, so you don't have to come back later after you removed your yellow, if you're only working with one pot, and put your design or your fleur-de-lis in there. But we want to put this outside dot right there. So you go ahead and do that on all 6 of those as well. Go ahead and put that dot. So go ahead and put the dots on those, and then we'll come back and we'll get started on the yellow on the inside circles. Okay, once we've got our dots all on the inside of our designs, and then we've also done those outside dots, we're going to come back and do the fleur-de-lis. If you have more than one melting pot and you're not switching colors, you can wait and put these on after we do the brown. So that is just something when I'm teaching a class so that you can work out of one pot. Alright, we're going to switch over to our number 2 tool. And don't forget, just changing colors, you want to wipe it off before you put it into your chimney. That keeps your chimney clean. If it does get dirty, just come back in with a Q-tip and clean it out. And we're going to go to our number 2 tool, the small end. And the first thing let's get some practice on these big open circles. Let's just put in, we're going to do 16 strokes in them. So we're going to just start at 12 o'clock like we always do, and don't forget you've got stuff on the other side now, and then we're going to do 6 o'clock, 3 and 9, alright, and then we're going to divide it again. We're divided into 8 now. And then Uncle Joe showed up at Thanksgiving dinner with his wife and 6 kids. So we've got to divide that pie one more time. So we are going to divide this into 16 strokes. These you want to keep nice and even because we're going to come back and we're going to put the brown in between them. And yes, it does fit. So we'll get that brown right in between them. And this is where you're going to start to learn how how you do it may be different than your size of your strokes may be different, and then you'll start to learn how to adjust for your tools. Don't forget to keep your yellow, an eye on your yellow wax, and put in wax when it starts to get below 3/4 full. So we're going to come and we're going to do the second one now. But otherwise your strokes are going to start to get smaller if you're not watching that. And we're dividing that into 4 again. Then we're going to divide it into 8. Alright. And then we're going to divide it one more time when we get our 8 in here into 16. Try to keep it as even as possible because we're going to come back in here and put those brown strokes right in between them. Isn't this starting to get fun? I know a lot of people say that they really enjoy this process, that it's very relaxing for them. If you're not having a good time, practice a little bit. Alright, so we've got this part going on. So I want you to go ahead and finish the last one. So we've got 3 of those. 1, 2, 3, just the solid ones. So finish the solid ones for me. And you can at that time go ahead and, well, let's leave them on. Let's leave them on. Just go ahead and finish those 3 and then come on back and then we'll start on our Starburst design. Okay, now that you've got those 3 on, let's work on the little Sunburst design. And we're still using our number 2 tool, and I want you to stop and check your wax again, and if you need to add more yellow, add more yellow. using the number 2 tool, the small end, and people start to panic when they hear me say that we're going to be coming in between each and every one of these. But remember, the biggest part of the stroke is going up here, so by the time you get down here, you've got a small line, so you do get them in there. And don't worry if you get it on the blue a little bit, that's okay. Just take your time and bring that stroke right in. Now we're starting on the outside circle, pulling it towards you, and just slowly work that in. Don't rush it. Make sure you're not flicking it. You're just bringing it nice and slow in there. And don't forget, we're going to add the stone in the middle. So if it starts to look a little bit dirty in there, we're going to clean it up. It's alright. We're just bringing it in between each one of those. And don't worry about if you run out of wax before you make it to that middle as well. So we're starting to get those nice and neat there. And I'm going to turn this a little bit. This one really turns on me. This gourd really goes down there. And you can see how this one, I actually had it turned too much and it didn't pull as far as the other ones did. So make sure that you're moving that around so you can get it where you need it. And we just bring those in between each and every one of them. And we got one more left. Isn't it nice how this is really starting to come alive, and you're really starting to see the bright colors and everything in it. I'm going to go ahead and let you finish the other 2 and just take your time and complete those nice and slow. When you're done with that point, we're going to come back and we're going to work on our brown. So go ahead and finish those other 2 for me. Take your time, get those nice and neat in between there, and come on back. Okay, once you've got your 3 sunburst all done, we're going to come back to our other circle design, and we're going to change from yellow to brown. So if you're only working with one melting pot, let's change to our brown just above the Crayola symbol. Cut your paper down, peel it off, and put your Crayola in your melting pot. You can order one color of crayon if you're using a lot of crayon. You can they sell it in 64 and they let you actually pick 4 different colors. You can pick it all one color if you wanted to, or however you want to divide it up amongst the 4. Just go to CrayolaStore.com and you can pick up those colors. So that's one thing if you're doing a lot of a certain color, a certain design that you may like to know. Now we're actually going to come back in here in between each and every one of these with our brown and the number 2 tool, and it does fit, so don't panic on me. And we're just going to put those in between. You've already got it measured out, so the hard part is done for you. Each and every one of those on those 3 circle designs. And some people find it easier to work with a different size tool than the others. I like to use with the size I need for the stroke, but some prefer the number 2. I always try and start teaching with the number 2, but some people actually prefer the smaller tools. See how that's really starting to take shape. We're just putting that right in between there. Each and every one of those, and they're already pre-measured like we talked about, and we dripped, so let it cool off and keep on going. Remember to try and keep it as flush as you can so that stroke isn't trying to run off on you. See how that guy kind of ran? That's what it would do if you had it turned to the one side too much. It's going to try and run away on you. And now that we've got it dried, we're going to come in here and remove it. Just simply clean it off. Okay, the wax when you're cutting it off can be really sticky, and it's going to want to stick to other wax on your gourd. Sometimes by bringing, a lot of times I'll just use my apron and wipe it, or using the paper towel, it'll stick to that better than when you try to use your hands. So if you're starting to get some little wax flecks, come in and do that as well. So I want you to go ahead and finish the other two now. I did also want to show you, remember that one area that we didn't want to put the circle in, so we put this part here, and see how that did that nicely, so we didn't have to be working on that part. And then I also, once you're done with putting the brown on, I want you to come back and I want you to remove all the rest of your white lines on all your circles. You shouldn't have any lines left. And then we're going to put the brown part on our starburst area. And like I said, it's easier to remove the lines now than it is later. So go ahead and finish those up, and then remove your lines, and then we'll do the next section. Now that you've removed all of your lines on your circle designs, we're going to go back and we're going to pull the brown out from the inside of the Sunburst. We're still using the number 2 tool, and we're going to go just above the blue, not directly on it. You want to leave some room between it so it doesn't look like it's all one thing, but we're going to come in here and we're going to pull this. Remember, you're pulling it towards you, but you're pulling the stroke following this blue in all the way out. So keep this in a straight line. So the next one's going to come all the way out, and you're just going to let the brown run out of wax. You're not going to lift it up. This helps it keep more the same size, and if you actually try to end it, and then you get that nice clean crisp tail on it. Now remember not to go too fast. Just walk that out there. If your strokes are starting to get real long, some people slow down real slow, and we don't want to do that. We want to keep a nice clean stroke on it, and you can see how they're starting to end all about the same length. Now make sure that your well is full again, that you've reloaded that you're not starting to get low on the wax, because that will make it start to get smaller stroke size. So we're just bringing that all the way up, and this really fills your gourd out and your pattern out, and just really starts to bring this whole design around. Now remember, this is that area we were talking about, allowing enough room to get that stroke on there. If by chance you didn't, and you're actually starting to get into this design up here, then just stop when you get to, if you were happen to get into the shelf part, just stop. I did want to show you this part. Sometimes this will happen, and what you're actually doing is you're pulling the stroke and you've run out of wax, but you turn your tool a little bit and it's got wax on the other side and it picks it up. So if you're doing anything like that, that is what you're doing. So I'm just going to try and clean this off here, because I want that stroke to still end about the same length as the other ones. So we're just going to try and come in here and take some of him off and leave some of it. You can clean your strokes up on the side this way as well. Alright, and this guy's just a little bit shorter. It doesn't bother me. A lot of people ask me, Miriam, do I take this off? Do I need to redo this? And my answer to them is, does it bother you? Don't worry about what I'm concerned about, but if you don't like it, remove it, because it will bug you. You're your hardest on yourself. You're your worst critic. So I'm never perfect. If you look at my stuff, you'll notice that I don't worry if I'm perfect or not. Actually, one very good lesson when I was taking my stuff to a gallery up in Sedona, one of the things that they told me is, Miriam, your stuff is too perfect and nobody believes it's handmade. So don't worry about being exactly perfect, because we want our personality to come through, I guess is kind of a nice word for that. So let's go ahead and do this second one now. So we're just above that blue, walking it all the way out till it stops, not lifting it up. And we're just going to bring that around. And we're just going to keep on going here. I enjoy this part of it, just letting it run out, not worried about getting it so much in between another stroke or something like that. Just pulling it towards you until it's gone. Now remember, you can do a different gourd using the same design, just change your colors up. You could do a black and white one, but you could change any colors your friends like as a gift or for Christmas. You could do this as a Christmas design with greens and golds and all kinds of fun stuff. So don't get stuck in just my designs. Think about what you can change it to. Okay, so go ahead and do the last one for me so that we have all three of those completed. And then come on back. We got one other part that we're going to do brown on, and we're getting close to being done. Okay, we've already put our Sunburst on, and we're ready to work on our fleur-de-lis. Remember, we put those little yellow dots on, and if you didn't, then you can put them on after we do this. If you need to draw this in with a charcoal pencil, that's fine. If you want to keep them consistent shape and size so you know how you want to do it, that is not a problem. So I've switched back to my number 1 tool. And I'm going to come in, and I'm going to come in just below that dot. I'm not going to actually touch the dot. And I'm going to come to the right, and I'm shorter than the initial stroke. And then I'm going to do the one to the left. Now, if you have yours touching, just stop above that. That's okay. Don't worry about that. So we're going to come in, and we're going to do some more here. And you're just bumping up next to the brown, and because it is smaller, or thinner, I should say, near the bottom, you can do that. You can't come across the thick, cold part of the wax. So we're just bumping up against that and meeting that tail and just bringing that down. And so about from a third of the way down, you've almost got one solid line. That's really starting to look neat, isn't it? And this gourd was not the prettiest shaped gourd. When I started with it, it was actually a class leftover. Nobody wanted the poor little gourd, but now it's really starting to get really pretty and really gorgeous. This is a little bit thicker gourd, and a lot of people ask me where I get the nicer gourds, and I actually feel guilty when I have thicker ones because for my process I don't really prefer the real thick gourds, but my gourds do come from Wart's Gourd Farm in Casa Grande, Arizona, and they have nice thick ones, and if you need thicker ones, just email them and ask them, and they're under the internet, and if you can't find them, please email me or contact me, and I'll tell you how to get a hold of them. But that's where I get most of my gourds from, and I really enjoy working with their gourds, and they're a quality gourd, and I don't have to worry about them breaking and stuff as much as the thinner ones. So another thing I forgot to tell you, the little yellow flecks that you get with the dots, I didn't get as many because I wasn't doing bigger dots, but that's kind of the nature of the beast. So if you get any of those, you can simply just remove them with your knife if you don't like them. And if you're getting more than 1 or 2 per dot, then you're going too fast and you need to slow down. But those just happen to come with the process. There's not a lot you can do about it except for slowing down, and then you get a little bit less. Now we've got that top all done. So go ahead and complete these fleur-de-lis for me with the brown, and then we are done with the brown, and we're going to go back to our turquoise. So if you're working with one pot, change your brown out, and if you put any lines on with the white charcoal pencil and they're showing, go ahead and remove those. If your pattern had a little bit more space in here and you needed to put a dot on top of the bottom of your fleur-de-lis to clean it up, go ahead and add a yellow dot in there as well to kind of help clean that up. And we're going to put our turquoise dots on next, and I think that is the final thing as far as the wax, and this is really starting to be real fun here. So go ahead and get that done, and then let's get started on our turquoise dots. We're going to put our turquoise dots on now, and if you happen to have the 3 pots and have your turquoise sitting, stir it because it's starting to separate a little bit because we've let it set. This is one of the few times that I want you to stir it. Don't get in the habit of just normally stirring your turquoise wax. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come in and let's do our solid guy first, our circular design, and you can pick which one that you want to put your dot above. Either pick the yellow or pick the brown. There is no right or wrong, but only do it above one of them. If you do it above both of them, there's too many dots. I'm still using my number 2 tool. A lot of times when I'm doing dots, people ask me, well, how do you know what size stroke you do the dots with? And I normally, now on these I had to just figure out what room I had, but on these, most of them I say, what tool did I use to do the stroke? So whatever tool we use to do the stroke with is the tool that I use to do the dots with. So remember, we're going to load it just like we did our strokes, and we're going to come up above. I'm doing just all brown here, and I'm putting it above my brown, and boy, I'm getting big dots today. And we are going to do them all above the brown, and a little bit smaller dot is fine too. On your dots, make sure that you allow them to set. Don't turn your gourd on them sideways because they will run away on you just like your strokes will. So we want to be careful about that too. So we've done that part. Okay, so we have all of our dots on, and we're going to go ahead and do our dots. Go ahead and do the 3, but I'm going to go ahead and walk you through all of the dots. So in our starburst, we're going to do a descending dot. And descending dots are fun because it's a one time where you can come in and do dot, dot, dot. And you're actually running out of wax. You're starting above the yellow. You're not touching the yellow. Don't get too fast because you don't want the flecks to come around, and you're just going to do descending dots. Isn't that really adding that design? A lot to that design. You're bringing back in that color in the center, and it's just really opening that design up. Let's bring back that color in to the center. Okay, and then we've completed that part of the design. Isn't that a lot of fun? Okay, go ahead and put all of your dots on for me. And when you get done with that, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about varnishing it, and after that we'll do our embellishments. Okay, now that you've finished putting all of your design on, got all of your dots on, I want you to do one more check of making sure that you've got all of your white lines removed, especially like in these areas right here. So get your damp Q-tip and remove that, or if you can't get it off with your Q-tip, then also you remember you've got your gum eraser as well. So once you've got that all done and are ready to varnish it, another thing to make sure that you remove is this little guy right here that we worked with earlier. We want to make sure that he's not on there when we varnish as well, that we've removed all the white lines. So when we get ready to varnish, if you ever come to one of my classes, in class I have you use Krylon gloss, and the reason for that is I never know what type of weather I'm teaching in, and because of the wax technique and everything, that the spray varnish works so much better than the brush on varnish. First of all, if it's not sealed enough, the red would run over the crayon like the yellow and not look as nice on your gourd, so you don't want to use a brush on, you want to do the spray on. And I use the gloss because of the humidity. If you've ever had a gourd turn white on you, that is one of the reasons, is the humidity outside. You do try to want to make sure that it's a drier day outside, but the gloss is less likely to do that than any of the others. So I don't ever want to have a gourd or a class full of people that turn their gourds white and they are very upset because we've spent hours working on this nice gourd. I spray a lot of mine with the gloss, and then when I get home I will come in with the Krylon triple thick glaze. And if you look at most of my gourds, they have the real shiny coating to them. This is actually a plastic coating, and I prefer it because it is more durable and gives my gourds just a little bit more stability, so that they're not as easy to damage as with the regular gloss Krylon. So and you can use this product over the gloss, which I do a lot. So that is kind of how I do it. If you have a dry day, you can go straight to this. This is not an issue, but you want to make sure that it is not humid outside when you do use this product. If you happen to turn it white, a lot of people will say put it into your oven. Remember, we're working with wax, and that doesn't work real well. So if it does turn white, allow it to dry all the way and then go over it again on a dry day, and then it should turn it back for you. It shouldn't be a big deal. Now, when you're varnishing outside, if it's a hot summer day, I would varnish it in the shade. You want to make sure you have a well-ventilated area. If you have a garage that opens, that's a nice thing too. Remember, this is wax, and like any nice art or gourd art, you should not put it in direct sunlight. So you do not want to have your gourd in direct sunlight. I always forget this when I go out and varnish it. I'll remember that part, and then I'll set it in the sun for it to dry. I'm probably my worst offender, especially when it comes to my tree gourds. I don't know why I do that, but I have a tendency to do that. So I spray varnish them. Either come set them in your garage, or if it's winter time, I bring it back into the house where it's warm and just let it continue to dry. They dry really fast. On this one, I was just looking at it. It says to have it in a well-ventilated area. Make sure it's 50 to 85 degrees. So you want to make sure that you follow your step on that one. On this one, it dries in 10 minutes. And I know that this other one, you can let it dry just for a couple minutes and then put another coat on it as well. You don't have to wait for it to dry for a long period of time. And when I varnish, I make sure I'm about a foot out from my project, and I always do the bottom first, and then I come back in, because a lot of people varnish like this, and I don't. I do a nice coat like this, And about this speed, if you slow down to about this speed, this is where your runs start to come in. And your runs can cause it to pick up the color and bring it over your crayons, so you don't want to do that. You want to keep it not real fast, but a nice medium speed. And like I said, it does dry really well. And this also, I know where I started and where I end, so that's a nice thing as well. On this one, I would set it probably on down, or make sure you get your top on this one as well, and then set it onto your gourd board to dry it. When you use a gourd board, it's got the little pokey things on it, so you don't have to worry about it sticking. So do a couple of nice coats on it. But remember to always check your products when working with them. It's always a good idea to test it in just a spot first before you continue to work on it, especially when you're mixing two products. They're always changing our ingredients on us, so we always want to test it first to make sure that we're not going to have any issues with it. So go ahead, go outside, varnish it. If you need to wait till a sunshiny day, do that. And once you varnished in it and it's dry, then we're going to come back and glue your embellishments on. Okay, once that you've varnished your gourd, and mine isn't as shiny, in case you didn't notice when you're in the studio and you've got a bunch of lights, it's really hard to see anything but shine, so that's the reason mine is not as shiny yet. And I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the embellishments just so you can see it. When you're buying your embellishments, remember to think about how many parts you need where. For the top part, I like a little oblong, or on this case, I have a little bit bigger teardrop. And on the smaller teardrops, I put them this direction, but I thought these would be kind of nice going this direction on that. And then I have 3 stones to put on. As actually, I put these on the center of those, which may be a little bit big. We'll have to play with it. And then I have the small turquoise, which I may be putting both of those on in the middle of those. So think about, and you want a flatter bead if at all possible, because those go to the gourd nicer. And like I talked about in the beginning, remember to look, scrapbooking embellishments are really nice because they're flat, and there can be a lot lighter because they're using a lot of times plastic instead of stone. So don't get just stuck thinking stones. You can also use beads, your plastic beads or your silver beads or different things like that. Especially with this one would be real pretty as well. But think about the 6 here, and then think about 3 of one design and 3 of the other design. If you wanted to do all 6 on the bottom, or if you want to do all 12 the same, you can. But I think changing them for the different designs makes them nicer. Now when I'm gluing those on, I only use E6000. If you've never worked with this product, it is a superior glue. I used to use different types of glues because the consistencies were a little bit nicer. This can get a little bit gooey, or kind of gum up on you, especially when you haven't used it a while. You have to kind of push your toothpick down and bring it back up to the top. But with that said, this glue glues and stays glued. I was always replacing my stones on my gourds when we first started traveling, and since I've changed to E6000 in the last year and a half, I've glued 1 stone on. So the E6000 works a lot better. You also can glue stone to anything is really hard because your stone is not an absorbent surface, but glass to glass, any of those that are really hard like that, your E6000 is really the better glue. Now the one thing with E6000 is, we talked about its consistency being a little bit gummy, and I just use, this is actually my texture brush insert, but anything that you can put your glue on, sometimes a piece of foil or anything like that. And do a little bit of glue at a time. Don't do a whole bunch of glue. And I always glue it to my stone and then put it on my gourd. I don't bring it over my gourd because you can get that stringy stuff onto your gourd, and it's like the glue gun tails, only it doesn't come off as easy. So you want to make sure that you don't do that over the top of your gourd. Put it onto your stone as well. And less is better. You want to make sure that you don't have so much on it that it's squishing out your sides, the sides of your stone. You would rather put it on. Now this stone's really nice because this gourd is more flush and the stone is not going to run away on you. But when we start to get into the stones on the sides, it's a lot trickier because they will want to move on you for a while. I would put all of these stones on, and then I would probably let them dry a little bit, and then I would start to put your stones on the side. The first thing I would do is watch it and hold it there for just a couple minutes. And I've also heard that if you take the E6000 and you on it and then put it on, and actually if you have a little bit on your gourd and a little bit on your stone and then do that, it's even better. Just watch out for those tails that we talked about. Now this one isn't as heavy as some of the stones, but what happens is you walk away and your stone slides. You're going to have to watch it for at least probably 20 minutes because it can move around on you. So be aware of that, and then when you're all done, just keep watching those stones. When you're at home, you have a little bit more time to work on that. So you can, watch them and use that time to glue one set on. And if you can glue a stone on and leave it at that direction, it's not going to have a tendency to move on you as much. Still watch it because you're still not at a flat surface. And the E6000, a lot of people want to know where you can purchase it. You can purchase that at Walmart in the craft section, and it's not that expensive. A lot of your other stores will carry it as well, your craft stores, but it's going to be cheaper at the Walmart unless you have your 50% coupon or things like that off. So we're going to take time and glue all of your stones on, and don't be afraid to play with different type stones, but see how that really starts to clean your pattern up and everything. So we want to cover up all of our little tails and all of our little mistakes, and then just really starts to clean up our gourd, and just the embellishments just add so much to it besides cleaning it up. They just really make your design pop. I think embellishments are very important in doing my design work. It just really brings it to life and makes it stand out. Because you've already kind of got a 3D effect, this really makes it fun and brings it out even that much more. So go ahead and glue your stones on, and we're going to come back and just go through a couple of bits of information for you, and you're going to have a beautiful gourd. Okay, we have varnished this one, and this one has a triple thick on it, so it's really glossy and a nice even coat. And then we had some different stones on this one. I kind of used a diamond shaped stones up here, which really accents the design very well. And then the round, bigger, flat gold ones I really like, with the small turquoise in the middle of the other ones. So I just wanted to show you a different variety of the stones and how they look. So I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope you had a great time. Please continue to do this. Change your colors, do it with different gourds, and just have fun. But the important thing is to just do it. A lot of people put things off because they take a lot of time, but this is a process where you don't have to take a lot of time, and you can have a beautiful gift or a beautiful gourd for you. And if you have any questions about this process or anything that we've done in the video today, please email me at art@miriamjoy.com. Or for any of the products that we use that you don't have, that you may need to purchase, please go to my website, which is miriamjoy.com. And on there is also a link that will link you to Facebook. You don't have to be a member of Facebook. You can simply go to the link, and I post a new gourd up there every day. I always have contests going on or different little things like that. And also it gives you information when I post new YouTube videos. Also on the miriamjoy.com there is a link to the YouTube videos, and these are shorter YouTube videos that are just done just for you to help you use the wax process in different ways on different items to make fun projects, or for the holidays that don't cost a lot of money, or different things like that. I also try and do little videos on the process if there's an area that people are having a hard time with. There's going to be one on the texture brush, or how to put your pattern on. We've got one up there like that. Or simply how to clean your melting pot out. So any of those that you need help with, they're up there as well. And I really hope you enjoyed this class, and God bless, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts for Miriam Joy.